muri kuzviona sei. Oh, shall remain. Yours truly, Mr. One Blow. One Blow. Foolish government. Yeah, me raspi. Urumende ye mageva, takatumira mbava. Urumende ye mageva, tiri kutongwa netoti. Yemeso nuri geva, takatumira mbava, geva. Matoti, urumende ye mbava, tiri kutongwa negeva mbava. Toti, takatumira. From bad to worse, tishiva kuna baba bona. Unogona wona hapa na chata gona. Zwakango my life iri kuona. Orita nditi munoti kutongwa kwaro. But say kuchishga vekumba kwaro. Youths unemployed but inao magwaro. Zimbabwe yese aina mufaro. Say muchidaru, kuita makaro. There is too much kakistocracy. Where is our democracy? Chibataru okoro wangu mwana weva. Inindi chabarako. Let's rise, let's be wise and expose this Zimbabwe aparara vedue. Saga chibataru okoro wangu mwana weva. Mageva, takatumira mbava. Urumende ye mageva, tiri kutongwa netoti. Yemeso nuri geva, takatumira mbava. Geva. Matoti, urumende ye mambava ta. Tiri kutongwa negeva mbava. Toti, takatumira.
So what is it that we can say except to remember, of course, those that fought in the liberation that gave us 1980, giving us an opportunity as Black people now to be able to chart a new path for our country, Zimbabwe. Please remember that the hope we have, us and our children and our children's children, let it be the same hope they have all others and their children and their children's children, those whose homes we will never know and those whose nations we will never visit. For the hope of a Zimbabwean child must be universal, because this is about our people, it is about our country, and this is yet another day and another hour we meet to deliberate on issues affecting our great nation of Zimbabwe. It is now 28 minutes past 7 in Harare. Also there, at 28 minutes past 7 in the city of Bulawayo. So our two guests have now joined us on this big Zimbabwe debate. And of course, I'm asking those kindly, those who are on the speakers for now, if you can behave yourself by keeping quiet, you don't make any comments, it's fine, you can stay there. Otherwise, you may have to drop yourself to the listeners for now. We will only be bringing the speakers up at a later stage. So for those that are requesting, my friends, thank you for requesting. I'm not going to be bringing you up now. We will be bringing you up at a later stage. We want just these two outstanding Zimbabweans to be able to battle it out between the two of them. So we have in the house the leader and founder of the Zimbabwe anti-sanctions movement, Rutendo Benson Matinyarare, a man who received a lot of flack in South Africa representing Zimbabweans, a man who spent a lot of his own money, you see, to work to ensure that Zimbabwe is free of sanctions. When it came to the issue of the Zimbabwe anti-sanctions movement, I think those who follow the news from the beginning, they know very well the work of Rutendo and what he has been outspoken on issues. Which issues, he has been outspoken much on. So we have him here, the leader of the anti-sanctions movement. We also have political analyst, engineer Kudzai Mutisi with us, a ZANU-PF member, and somebody who, of course, many people associate, of course, with the ruling ZANU-PF government. And we have the two of them together here. Recently, Rutendo Matinyarare has been, of course, been very scathing, or rather, can I say, he has been very critical of course, the amendment bill number 3, which, of course, some people call the 2030 agenda. And we are here to ensure that we have a robust debate. We are here to ensure that we represent our generation the same way they represented their generations before 1980, those who went to war. They went to war because they loved this country. And we are here in our generations. We also love our country. What is it that is tangible that we're going to leave for our people? What are we going to leave for our country? We are going to have the great Zimbabwe debate starting now. Let me just greet my co-host, the Hot Seat Empire, Rozobo. The Hot Seat Empire, welcome to the space now. I hope you settled where you are before I introduce now our two guests to our audience. Hot Seat Empire, welcome to the space. How are you today?
Great. Hulu, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. I'm very excited. Thank you very much to my two brothers, Kudzai and Rutendo. This is going to be a robust conversation. If you have the opportunity, please follow Hulu so that every time we have these kind of conversations, you can be there. And also, please, guys, reshare the space right now because everybody wants to hear what's going to go on down today. Okay. So if you are here, please share the space. It's going to be lit, and we thank you very much, Rutendo and Kudzai, for availing yourselves.
Zimbabwe muri kuzviona sei, oh shall remain. Yours truly miss a one blow, foolish government. Yeah, me raspi. Urumende yemageva, akatumira mbava. Urumende yemageva, tiri kutongwa netoti. Takatumira mbava, geva.
And then I decided to deduce it tonight. Get paid so low that they're not.
Guys, you guys are very important to
out between the two of them. So we have in the house the leader and founder of the Zimbabwe anti-sanctions movement, who, of course, the great Zimbabwe debate starting now. Let me just greet my co-host, the Hot Seat Empire, Rozobo. The Hot Seat Empire, welcome to the space now. I hope you settled where you are before I introduce now our two guests to our audience. Hot Seat Empire, welcome to the space. How are you today?
Great. Hulu, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. I'm very excited. Thank you very much to my two brothers, Kudzai and Rutendo. This is going to be a robust conversation. If you have the opportunity, please follow Hulu so that every time we have these kind of conversations, you can be there. And also, please, guys, reshare the space right now because everybody wants to hear what's going to go on down today. Okay. So if you are here, please share the space. It's going to be lit, and we thank you very much, Rutendo and Kudzai, for availing yourselves, guys. You know, everybody wants to hear from you guys. You guys are very important to the Zimbabwean space, and we respect who you are, you know, intellectually, spiritually, and personally. So thank you very much, Hulu.
Thank you, Rudo. Thank you very much. Okay, let me those who are requesting, guys, I see you. You can remain on the request. It's fine. Vahombe just wants to greet, our guest. He says we cannot start without him greeting our guest. So please, my apologies, guys. I'm just bringing Vahombe. So he can just greet, the two guests before they begin the debate. Vahombe, welcome to the space. It has been a long while. It boggles my mind where what has been happening with you. You know that you're the one who likes that statement. Vahombe, what's up? How are you? Speak, Wahombe. Speak. Greet Kudzai is here. Greet Rutendo. What boggles your mind today, eh? All right. He doesn't want to speak anymore now quickly. I don't know what is going on with Wahombe. So Wahombe, stay there. Or
Hulu,
it's his
Hulu,
network.
Hulu, I think you will have to drop me. Who is that? I can't see them, so I
Oh,
can't really see
he's
them.
here. He's here. I can see him.
Oh,
It's
okay, I can
Wahombe.
see now. Okay, it's
Yes,
fine.
Rutendo and Kudzai, they know Wahombe. So, Wahombe, I don't know. Are you able to speak now? It seems like your network was giving you a bit of problems. Are you able to speak now, Wahombe? Okay. Wahombe's network, I think, is still giving him a bit of issues. Wahombe, if you can hear us, you can listen up now as I'm introducing now the leader and founder of the Zimbabwe anti-sanctions movement, Rutendo Benson Matinyarare. So, Rutendo, you can just quickly greet our audience. Well, you have given a rating of the president a 2 out of 10. That is what you gave this government, 2 out of 10. Well, we will find out from Engineer Kudzai Mutisi in terms of what does he give to the government as at a rating out of 10. But welcome to the space, Rutendo. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yes, good evening to you, Hulu, and good evening to you, Hot Seat, and everybody else on the platform. Good evening, guys. How are we? And just for the record, Hulu, I didn't say that the president scored 2 out of 10. I said that his performance was mediocre or average. And I think we can say average is what, 50%?
Okay. Rutendo, okay, no problem. I get that. Okay, Engineer Mutisi, welcome to the space. What was going on with your network there? Because we have been waiting for you, but we are glad that you are here with us now. Please greet our audience.
Thank you, Hulu, and thank you to the audience. Thank you for your patience. It was not my network. I was still occupied with something. So as soon as I became free, I ready to join the space. So I'm here and I'm ready to discuss the issues that matter. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Guys, for those who are requesting, we are not going to be wasting time. Please remain on the request. We are going to be bringing you up at an appropriate time. For now, it is just going to be Rutendo and Kudzai. So, Rutendo, without wasting time, let's get on to this. Right. You have been opposing the 2030 amendment bill, you see, which is the amendment bill number 3. Now, I want to find out from you in terms of the performance of this government since 2017, the performance of this government. Why would you give it a rating of 5 out of 10? Can you articulate that to our audience? What do you think has been the performance of this government? Do you think it deserves to be given another chance? Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Hulu. I think, first of all, let me put this into context. Fundamentally, I do not disagree with the entire amendment bill. I disagree with certain elements. I disagree with the process that is being undertaken to review the amendment of this bill. And so that was where my issues are. So I'll give you some examples so that we understand what I'm talking about. For me, the whole concept of amending the Constitution is not a problem. In fact, I think it should be encouraged in a democracy for constitutions to be amended in line with people's changing needs and the changing public interest. So, for example, I would not have a problem with the changing of the constitution to stop us compensating white farmers. I would not have a problem with changing the constitution in terms of even the term limit, because I believe that we are spending too much time in an electioneering mode. 5 years, in the 5 years, 2.5 years is spent by people busy bickering about who won the election and preparing for elections. And half of the time, there's no work being done because people are busy fighting over elections. So a 7-year extension for me makes sense, because then we spend 2 years fighting over elections and electioneering, and then another 5 years executing and getting the job done. However, the problem then becomes that if we're going to be going for 7 years, who is going to be an oversight of the executive and also the oversight of parliament to ensure that in those 7 years, they're performing their job, because we're not going to have an opportunity to remove them before time. So if it's a president, I want to know that we've got a parliament that is going to be able to hold the president accountable, make the president answer to how he is performing, and if he's not performing, they should be able to recall the president as an active parliament. Now, the problem with the current amendment is it doesn't allow that to happen. If the president is not performing after he was elected by a parliament that could have been induced or could have been coerced or could have been bribed to vote for a president, then that very same parliament becomes a parliament that may not be able to vote that president out. It becomes a parliament that might not be able to hold that president to account, and it might be a parliament that cannot recall the president. It's also the same reason why I've got a problem with clause 15 that says that they want to change the wording from the military being able to defend the constitution. Because now, if the military cannot defend the constitution, when parliament and the executive begin to abuse the constitution, and parliament is not oversight over the president because it is complicit with the president, the army then is barred from protecting the constitution and defending the constitution by doing what they did to Robert Mugabe and his wife. Robert Mugabe and his wife were abusing the constitution. Parliament was complicit with them. However, the military was able to step in and to remove the threat to the constitution, because they should be able to defend the constitution from threats within and threats without. And so when the executive became a threat to the constitution, our military was able to step in. If the amendment that they require now to remove the wording that our military is going to be a defender of the constitution, all of a sudden now we do not have a military that can remove an executive and a parliament that is rotten and that is actually I want to use the word S, but but that is dumping on our constitution. So that is where I have a problem. I also have a problem with a parliament that is going to elect a president for us. In Zimbabwe, we've got a custom and a culture. The custom and the culture is that we elect our president and we elect our parliament. By electing our parliament and our president, we're able to tell and get from the people if they're happy with their parliamentarians, if they trust their parliamentarians, and if they trust the executive, and if they trust the parliament that is going to be oversight of the.
The man, he was a business.
You don't need to be elected in order to be a policeman or to defend something. You just have to be appointed, and then you just have to be trained to institute and enforce the law. So if the law was good enough to use, if the military was good enough to defend the constitution against Mugabe and the criminals who surrounded him, surely that military should still be good enough to also defend the constitution in future and to remove criminals around a president. Now, let's go to the top and just go through. You said that there are a lot of clauses in this amendment, about 21 clauses to be quite fair. But the truth of the matter is, most of those clauses are not real substantial clauses. Only 4 clauses really have meaning here. And that is the one that changes the electoral to create the electoral demarcation committee or something. And then the one that is to change the presidential term, and the one to get the parliament to vote for the president, and then the one to change the mandate of the military. The rest are just changes to little words here, a bit here, and a bit there. So what we want people to remember is to look at what is material. What is it that the people of Zimbabwe must look at, because it is going to affect their children's lives? I believe that who selects our president, who elects our president, matters in a country like Zimbabwe. Because you're trying to make it sound like the parliamentary system is a system you find all over the world. You find it in India, you find it in even found it in Zimbabwe before. Bruh, the constitution we're using in Zimbabwe when we were using that system was a constitution imposed on us by the Lancaster House Conference. It was the Lancaster House Constitution, not ours. When we had an opportunity to change that constitution, we changed it. In 1987, we started saying we want an executive president who is elected by the people and a parliament also elected by the people. So what changed? What is it that changed between 1987 for you to say, let's go back now to the British system? And I think what is changed is obvious to everybody that the Parliament of Zimbabwe is poorly paid. The parliamentarians are poor. They are rent seekers. They don't make the law. They are not, don't spend time researching on laws that benefit the people of Zimbabwe. They spend time looking for money. They spend time looking to undertake agendas of business people. And this is why we see that business people have ascended into the public office. They've ascended into running the party. They've ascended into determining what happens in the country. So yes, bribery is going to take place because it has already taken place. That's why Chabangu took over Nelson Chamisa's party. We know that people were paid to cross sides and to give ZANU-PF a two-thirds majority. And that parliament is no longer a parliament in which people are making decisions from morality. They're making decisions from their bellies. So I don't trust such a parliament. And I don't trust that such a parliament can be trusted to pick a president. You then say that, but the president is not picked by the parliament, it is actually picked by the party. But if the party is being run by money, if the party is being run by billionaires, then how can we then not say that the party can then choose a person to go into parliament to then become president just because he's got money that dictates what the party does? We are seeing it in Zimbabwe that money talks, and it talks more than the policies of a party, right? And you also have to remember that the party can no longer decide in advance who is going to be a president because the person that is going to be elected to be a president from the parliamentarians is somebody that must win in their constituency. Our current president struggled to win in his own constituency previously. So under the current system that you want to create, he would not be elected in a parliament because he would probably not make it to parliament because he did not win in his constituency. And there are a number of people. Ziambi did not win in his own constituency. So chances of a person like that becoming a president or being picked beforehand by the party becomes now. So it is the parliamentarians who have got money to actually contest in their constituencies, win elections in their constituencies, who are going to make it to parliament, who then stand the chance of being picked as president. Then we go and say the candidates of ZANU-PF choose that, okay? And you then talk about what we're trying to do is to change the electoral cycle. My question I want to ask you is, where do you get this word electoral cycle? Where did you guys get this word? Because the Constitution of Zimbabwe stipulates what a tenure in power is, and they do not use the word cycle, they use the word length. And this is defined in section 95, 2B, and also section 143. So where do you get this word cycle that you're trying to use? Because it's not within the Constitution. Are you using the word cycle to try and deceive people from understanding that there is something called a length that is defined and constitutes a tenure and constitutes a term? And that term is 5 years. 5 years is the maximum. That is why you hear that in section 328, when you want to change the constitution to increase, so you're looking from a maximum going forward, not looking at the minimum. You wanted to confuse us by telling us about the 2 years and then the 3 years. That doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because what matters to the Constitution and what the Constitution seeks to limit is the ability to increase. So you look at the maximum. What is the maximum number of years that constitutes a term? It's 5 years. So that maximum cannot be increased, it cannot be grown, cannot be expanded without breaking a term limit. And there is a term limit. That's why you have elections every 5 years. There is a term limit because that's why you are now trying to amend the Constitution to allow you to move it from 5 years to 7 years. Your own document, when you go and look right now at the proposal itself or the bill itself, it says on its own in clause 2, the amendment established, it says in clause 3, 7, and 8, to eliminate election toxicity, to allow sufficient time for project implementation while promoting stability. These clauses aim to substitute current 5-year term. It doesn't say current 3 to 5-year term. It says current 5-year term to 7 years. It's explicit. So you know that there's a term limit. So you're trying to expand it. You're trying to move it from 5 to 7. That is moving a term limit. And for you to argue that no, this is what the lawyers are going to decide, my question is, if we as the laymen and the citizens do not read our own constitution to understand the limits therein, how then do we have a dispute of fact that takes us to court? How will you competently know that we need to go and contest this in court? How will we competently know that we shouldn't let ZANU-PF try and use its two-thirds majority in parliament to extend the term limit if we don't read and understand the constitution? You are arguing about something that you say you are not a lawyer, you're not going to spend time going through the clauses. So you didn't read the clauses. If you didn't read the clauses, how do you speak with authority about the issues you're speaking on? You're speaking on a matter you don't understand. So how do you come and try to argue a term, argue a cycle, and put in these new words if you're not reading the Constitution yourself? We come from there, we go to the issue of, you said that Zimbabweans are limited to 2 terms. I have a problem with anybody in ZANU-PF who wants to argue that they agree that we've got two-term limits, but they do not want to identify what constitutes a term. How would you be able to count that your president has done 2 terms if you do not agree and there's no consensus on what the length of a term is? You do not hassle with the term 2 terms because you know the definition of 2 terms is 5 years. You are not, it's limited to 5 years. You know that. Everybody knows that. But for some reason, since Jonathan Moyo came about with this play with words of cycle and that the cycle is not limited because the Constitution does not say it is limited to 5 years, you have continued to try and create the impression that there is no limit. There is a limit. That's why your own bill says it wants to move it from 5 years to 7 years. How would people, right? So you say Zimbabweans are limited to 2 terms, okay? Terms of 3 years and 5 years, okay? Sanctions were removed in 2024. That's your saying, and I agree with you. And you said, so where are we going to measure the performance of the president? The president removed Robert Mugabe while there were sanctions. And he removed Robert Mugabe and came in with the Second Republic, which said that it wanted to do better than the First Republic. He has taken credit for growing gold production to record levels. He has taken credit for breaking wheat production records, taken credit for tobacco production records. All this has happened under sanctions. Why is it okay to take credit for the records that are broken under sanctions, but not to take credit for the failures that take place under sanctions? Iran is manufacturing right now hypersonic missiles that are giving the Americans a tough time while they're under 46 years of sanctions. If they can do that under sanctions, what excuse do we have for failing to build roads, to put water into people's houses, to tap water into people's houses, and to give people enough electricity? I also heard you being hypocritical, trying to say that Mugabe built a road from Plumtree to Mutare, which is a higher quality road than the Masvingo Road, and it is longer than the Masvingo Road, and it took shorter than the Masvingo Road. It's 667 kilometers done to the highest possible standards with world-class toll gates. Why can't the current president, and that was done under sanctions, why didn't the president do the same with the Masvingo Road, which is shorter? And you said that he doesn't owe any money on it. That's a lie. Bitumen is owed right now 120 million US dollars. They might not have gotten funding from banks to do that road, but they definitely are holding out on the suppliers who have built the road and are not being paid. That is a loan. Then you try to discredit Mugabe building the road to Plumtree Mutare by saying that he took loans for it. But then you go again to try to take credit for the building of Wange 7 and 8, yet the loan was given for that. So why should we give the credit for Wange 7 and 8 when you haven't paid the loan for it and when you were given a loan for it? If Mugabe is supposed to be discredited of his work because he got loans, why should we credit the Mnangagwa government for taking loans and building something? If we credit the Mnangagwa government for building Wange 7 and 8 through a loan, and they're currently going to give, I think, the Indians control of sections of Wange so that for 25 years, so that they can be funded to build the other expansion that is happening. And they also got a loan to fix Kariba Dam, 292 million US dollars, million euros to fix that dam. Why can our president get credit for that? But you don't want to give the same credit to Robert Mugabe. You then said that the fuel queues were ended by President Mnangagwa. That's not true. The fuel queues were ended in 2012, 2013, under the GNU, when Kudata
matoti hurumende yembava tiri kutongwa negeva mbava toti takatumira from bad to worse tichiva kuna baba bona unogona wona hapana chatagona zvakangoma life iri kuona orita nditi munoti kutongwa kwaro but sei kuchidya vekumba kwaro youth unemployed but inawo magwaro Zimbabwe yese haina mufaro sei muchida
Plumtree Mutare by saying that he took loans for it. But then you go again to try to take credit for the building of Wange 7 and 8, yet the loan was given for that. So why should we give the credit for Wange 7 and 8 when you haven't paid the loan for it and when you were given a loan for it? If Mugabe is supposed to be discredited of his work because he got loans, why should we credit the Mnangagwa government for taking loans and building something? If we credit the Mnangagwa government for building Wange 7 and 8 through a loan, and they're currently going to give, I think, the Indians control of sections of Wange so that for 25 years, so that they can be funded to build the other expansion that is happening. And they also got a loan to fix Kariba Dam, 292 million US dollars, million euros to fix that dam. Why can our president get credit for that? But you don't want to give the same credit to Robert Mugabe. You then said that the fuel queues were ended by President Mnangagwa. That's not true. The fuel queues were ended in 2012, 2013, under the GNU, when Kudata Gure was given control of the pipeline, the Beira pipeline, by a minister of MDC. That giving control of that